Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into motivational interviewing, MI for short. You've sent over some really interesting stuff from trainer Virginie Aimer, and she compares MI to her own method, advanced conversational hypnosis. So we're going to try to unpack how MI helps people make these big changes, even when they have, mixed feelings about it. What do you think? You ready to explore this?
Absolutely. I think MI is a fascinating approach, and I'm really interested to see what clicks with you today as we discuss it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I want you to just imagine for a second, you're trying to make some kind of positive change in your life.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
you want to start eating healthier. Maybe you want to finally commit to that like passion project that you've had on the back burner, but you're kind of stuck. Have you ever
Oh,
been there?
oh, absolutely. I think that's a very common human experience. We often know what's good for us, but sometimes taking that first step, it feels really overwhelming.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, okay, now imagine instead of someone just telling you what to do, right? Someone kind of helps you tap into your own reasons for wanting to make that change.
Right.
That's a huge part of what makes MI so effective.
Yeah, and the source material really emphasizes how MI accomplishes that. It encourages what they call change talk. So instead of just being told what to do or being given a plan, it's about guiding individuals to express their own desires and their own reasons for wanting to change.
It's like having that light bulb moment. You're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this isn't about what everyone else wants me to do. It's about what I want to do.
Exactly, exactly.
Uh,
Uncovering that intrinsic motivation.
Okay, so we've heard of MI, we've probably used it, but is there research that backs this up? Is this, a real thing?
Absolutely. MI, it's not just some, new age feel good concept. This has been around for decades. It originated back in the 1980s with psychologists William R. Miller and Stephen Rolnick, and they were working with substance abuse.
Wow, back in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah, back in the 80s. And now it's used in healthcare settings, education, even the justice system. It really speaks to this universal struggle we all face when it comes to making a change.
So interesting. So, okay, before we kind of jump into all the different places it can be used, can we break down what an MI conversation actually looks like?
Okay, so the source material mentions this helpful acronym, O.
Oh, wars, like the rowing.
Yeah, like rowing. Have you used this in your work?
I can't say that I have, so break it down for me.
Okay, so OR stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summaries. And it's essentially like a toolkit for having more constructive conversations. And that can even be with yourself.
Oh, interesting.
So like, those internal pep talks, but a little more structured.
Self-judgment, hopefully.
Exactly, yeah, a lot less self-judgment. And notice how all of the elements of ORs really put the individual at the center. So open-ended questions, those encourage exploration, right? Affirmations, they help to build confidence. Reflective listening ensures that you're understood. And then the summaries help you organize all your thoughts and figure out what your key motivations are.
It sounds like it's not about you telling yourself what to do. It's about you guiding yourself to find your own answers.
Exactly. And I think that's what leads to much more sustainable change. If someone just tells you, to change, you're going to push back. But when you come to that realization on your own through, like I said, reflection, exploration, that commitment goes a lot deeper.
So it's about really owning the change, not just doing it because, someone told you to, but actually feeling it deep down.
That's it. And that's where I think understanding that ambivalence is really important because MI recognizes that it's totally normal to have mixed feelings about making a change.
Like part of you wants to jump in, but there's that other part that's like holding you back a little.
Yeah,
We've all been there.
absolutely. And instead of just ignoring that or trying to fight it, MI says, let's explore it. What are the good things that could come from making this change? What are the things that maybe you're not so crazy about? What are you afraid of? What are the challenges that you're worried about?
Right. And that makes me think about that term you used earlier, developing discrepancy. It's almost like you're kind of holding up a mirror to that gap between where you are now and where you want to be.
Exactly. And the source material has a really good example from like a healthcare setting. So
Yeah.
let's say someone wants to eat healthier to help manage their diabetes, right?
Right.
Instead of just lecturing them about what to eat, a practitioner using MI might ask them, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to get your diabetes under control? And then they might ask, on that same scale, how confident are you that you can actually make those changes to your diet?
And there's probably a gap between those two numbers, right?
Usually, yeah. And that's the discrepancy. And it's about guiding that person to kind of recognize that disconnect, but doing it with compassion, no judgment there.
So it's not about beating yourself up. It's about saying, okay, I say that this is a 10 out of 10 important to me, but I'm only acting like it's a 4. Something's got to change.
Yeah, precisely. And that's when you start to see those seeds of real change starting to come up.
Okay, so how do you actually deal with that discrepancy? Like, it's one thing to recognize it, but then what?
That's where rolling with resistings comes in.
Hmm.
So, MI recognizes that it's totally natural to resist change, So instead of pushing against that, MI practitioners try to understand it.
So instead of being like, come on, you got this, it's more like, what's making this so hard? What are you worried about?
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Maybe they're worried about the cost of healthier food, or maybe they don't feel comfortable cooking, they don't know how to cook different kinds of meals.
Right. They haven't found that healthy alternative that they actually like.
Yeah. But by talking about those concerns, you can, address them, break down those barriers, and make it easier for them to change.
It seems like you'd really have to have a lot of patience with people,
Mm,
you know,
yeah,
and a lot of empathy to do MI well.
absolutely. It's not about coming in with all the answers. It's about being a guide for someone else as they, figure this out for themselves.
Because everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what makes MI so effective. It acknowledges that the individual has, their own autonomy. They're the expert in their own life.
Right, right. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the how, like, the techniques and the ideas behind MI. What about the where? Because you've sent over some really interesting material talking about how MI is being used in all these different places. Like, it's not just a therapist's office anymore.
Right. And that's what I think is so cool about it. It pops up in so many different places. Like you see it a lot in healthcare, doctors, nurses, they're using it to help patients manage chronic illnesses.
So instead of just handing someone a prescription and saying good luck, it's about really understanding what motivates them, what their challenges are.
Exactly. And research shows that when people feel like they have more control over their own health, they're more likely to actually stick to a treatment plan, and make those good changes.
That makes a lot of sense. What about other areas? Like, what are some other examples from the material that really stood out to you?
One that I find super interesting is how they're using MI in the justice system.
Really?
Yeah, like probation officers, they're using MI to help people reintegrate into society and hopefully, lower those recidivism rates.
So instead of just punishing someone, it's about like giving them the support to create positive
Yeah,
changes.
it's about setting them up for success in the long run. And it's not just for these big life-changing things either.
Oh, really?
You can use it for everyday stuff too. A teacher could use it to motivate their students, or managers, bosses can use it with their team.
So it's like a framework for having more effective conversations in any part of your life.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us back to Virginia Imere and her work with advanced conversational hypnosis, ACH.
Okay, yeah. So we've talked a lot about MI, but the stuff you sent says that ACH kind of takes things to another level. It's still all about helping people make these positive changes, but it taps into the power of the unconscious mind. So we're still talking about giving people the tools to make big changes, but ACH is saying we can use these subtle hints to kind of understand what's going on in their unconscious mind that might be holding them back or pushing them forward, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is that ACH still uses those same ideas of collaboration and autonomy that are so important in MI, but then it takes it a step further by saying, hey, we can actually use these subtle cues to understand those unconscious factors that are at play.
Okay, so is that where Imir's background as a trainer comes in? Like,
Mhm.
is ACH kind of drawing on techniques from hypnosis?
Absolutely. She emphasizes that we communicate on a lot of different levels, not just our words, but also our tone of voice, our body language, even those little micro expressions that we make without even realizing it.
So there's this whole conversation happening under the surface that we're not even aware of.
Exactly. And ACH practitioners, they're trained to recognize those cues, those little hints about what's really going on beneath someone's words,
Yeah.
It's not mind reading, but it's about being really observant, really tuned in to how the unconscious mind works.
That's so wild. So how does that play out in real life? Like if I'm using ACH with someone, how is that different from MI?
Well, MI uses a lot of direct questions, right? Like we talked about, really exploring things verbally. But ACH might use things like metaphors, stories, or even just subtle changes in body language to talk directly to that unconscious part of the mind. So imagine, let's say you're working with someone who wants to quit smoking, but they keep hitting these roadblocks. Instead of just focusing on the practical steps, an ACH practitioner might tell a story about a journey, where overcoming challenges leads to this place of freedom and well-being.
It's like you're speaking a different language, one that their logical mind might not get, but it, like, makes sense on this deeper level.
Exactly, because the unconscious mind, it doesn't think in logic, right? It thrives on symbols and emotions. So ACH uses those tools to create change. Think about the way we experience art or music. You might not be able to put into words why you love a certain song, but it just hits you in this deep place, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And Aimir actually has this great quote in the material about this. She says, "Give a person a fish and you feed them for a day. Teach a person to fish and you feed them for a lifetime."
Oh, I like that.
And I think that's a perfect illustration of the difference between MI and ACH. MI is like giving you the fish, that plan, those steps. But ACH is teaching you how to fish for yourself.
So giving you the skills to deal with whatever comes up, whether you have a plan or not.
Yes, it's about fostering that adaptability, that resilience. Because life, it's unpredictable, right? And even with the best plans, sometimes things happen, and ACH gives you the tools to face those challenges with confidence.
This has been so interesting. Both MI and ACH, they just seem so valuable, but in different ways. It's almost like MI is the architect, creating the blueprint for change, and then ACH is the interior designer, making sure you have what you need on the inside to really make that change your own.
What a great analogy. And at the end of the day, the approach that works best, it's going to be different for everyone, right? The key is finding what resonates with you, what empowers you to create lasting change in your life.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I'm already thinking about all the ways I can use these ideas in my own life and when I'm talking with others.
It is powerful stuff. Just remember, change, it's a journey, not a destination, right? It's always evolving.
That's a great point to end on. And for everyone listening, here's a little something to think about. As you're working toward your own goals, ask yourself, how could you use MI? Could incorporating some of those principles give you that extra push? What about exploring ACH? Could tapping into the power of both your conscious and unconscious mind be the key to unlocking your full potential? Until next time, keep on exploring.